Hello everybody. So today I'm going to present you JavaScript in 2016. I'm really excited to give you this presentation, and I really hope that you will enjoy this webinar. So without further delay, let us begin. So first of all, I'd like to present to you the roadmap. Today we're gonna talk about four main areas in which JavaScript is currently quite a major programming language. So first of all, we're gonna talk about web apps, and we're gonna talk what's the difference between the web apps and websites. The second thing we're gonna cover is what's the difference between a framework and a library, and what do you need to build a web app. After that, we're gonna talk about Angular, React, Meteor, and Mean, and we're gonna understand what all these things are and how to use them in the web app development. After that, we're gonna talk about the mobile apps. We will discuss the difference between the native apps, hybrid apps, mobile web apps, and we're gonna discuss the tools Cordova, Ionic, React, React Native, and NativeScript. After that, I'll show you really quickly that it is possible to build desktop apps using JavaScript. And the two main tools to do that are Electron and Node.js. Lastly, we're gonna talk about the last steps. That is, what is ES 2015? What is ES 2016? What is the best way to do prototyping? What are the best ways to building an MVP? And how to build a production app, what tools to use while building a production app using JavaScript. Lastly, I'm gonna give you some tips, like really quickly, how to get a job in the JavaScript as a JavaScript developer. So, firstly, web apps versus websites. Actually, for those of you who do not have a background in web development, those two things seem really similar. I've seen lots of people mix up web apps, websites, and actually they are similar in a way that all the web apps are websites. However, websites differ from web apps in a way that the main goal of a web app is to interact with the users. Imagine Facebook or Gmail or Amazon.com. All of these services are they are suited for the user to interact with this web app and to achieve some purpose, like or upload a photo or send an email or buy something. On the other hand, websites, their goal is to display content. For example, it can be like all types of blogs, like corporate websites, etc. So that's the difference, and knowing that, we can move to the frameworks and libraries required to develop web apps. Website development is it's rather much simpler than web app development. So even starting at 2005, people realized that they have to have a framework which helps them in creating the web app. So the first thing which did that at this time was the Dojo Toolkit. It was released in 2005. Shortly after that, jQuery was released. It's more as a library, and like today, like almost all of the websites are using jQuery. However, at this point, it was like really a new development which enabled Ajax calls and lots of stuff, which was very helpful for building web apps. After that, Angular was developed in 2009. It wasn't like immediately as popular as it is today. However, we can realize that it's quite an old web development framework. Knockout and Backbone were both developed in 2010, followed by Amber in 2011, Meteor in 2012, and React in 2013. I have like a really cool, I really liked this Which Cat is Your JavaScript Framework website. It's really funny, and it shows you the differences, like in a funny way, between most of these frameworks shown here. So, but we are not gonna base our presentation on these silly cat photos, and we're gonna do a proper research. So let's move on to the most popular and currently the king of all JavaScript frameworks, Angular. So first of all, it is developed by Google. It wasn't so in the beginning, but I think it was originally developed by one of Google employees. But currently it's fully supported by Google, and it is not the best, but the most popular JavaScript framework at the moment. It is a full MVC framework. That means it has the architecture of it has model, view, and controller, and the latest stable version is 1.5. Probably some of you know that currently Angular 2 is in beta. It is the newest iteration of Angular. It fixes lots of Angular sticking points since Angular was developed quite some time ago, as you've seen in 2009. At that point, the development practices were a little bit different. The infrastructure was different, and like lots of things were different. And Angular 2 fixes lots of what was wrong in Angular 1. One of these things is that Angular 1 is rather slow. Angular 2 is, I've seen lots of comparisons, and Angular 2 proves to be, even in beta, it proves to be like much faster. What is really cool, what the Angular team did, is they provided a way to mix Angular 1 code and Angular 2 code. That means in the Angular 2 app, you can have some Angular 1 code, and it will work. Like you have to do some additional stuff to have it working, but you can have it work. So that's really cool. It allows you to move like older projects to not like keeping the old projects on Angular 1, but provides a way to gradually move to Angular 2. One word of warning is that it's currently in beta. It will probably stay in beta for some time, and so you have to keep up with the news to know when it's moving to a full like stable version. So the differences between Angular 2 and Angular 1, first of all, it's language. Angular 1 uses the plain old JavaScript. Angular 2, on the other hand, uses TypeScript. TypeScript is a new language developed by Microsoft, which is like really strange. But Google decided that this is the best JavaScript like preprocessor language, and they decided to use that for this like super huge project. So what TypeScript adds to JavaScript is it adds some really good ways to structure big apps, to have like classes, and I'm gonna talk about TypeScript at the end of this presentation. But what you need to know right now that it's a little bit different language than JavaScript. It's probably better in my opinion, and it will be like really easy to learn. If you know like JavaScript, it will come to you like really fast. One other difference is that Angular is controller based. That means when you do something in Angular, most of the time you do that using a controller. In Angular 2, everything is moving from controllers to components. So everything will be component based. Angular is a very stable project. It's been around for quite some time. It has a large code base. It has like lots of tutorials. It has lots of example apps, etc. Angular 2, on the other hand, has been like it's graduated to beta, I think, at the end of the last year. So as you expect, it has like much less developed apps, much less tutorials available, etc. Also, as I mentioned, Angular is slower, Angular 2 is faster, and in my opinion, Angular 2 is easier to learn. For me at least. So let's move on to React. React is the second most popular JavaScript library. It is actually developed by Facebook, who could have guessed, but it's like really popular, and it's in my opinion really good. Most of the people have like this love-hate relationship with React. Some of them love it, some of them hate it. How I am one of those who really love React. It's not as Angular is a full MVC framework. React is just a UI library. So you should use React together with some like Flux framework like Redux. I personally recommend Redux as the best framework for as the best Flux framework. Also, you'll notice that it also doesn't use plain JavaScript. It uses JSX, which is a JavaScript syntax extension, which looks more like an XML. You'll see that actually, like my initial experience was, I thought that they're just putting HTML back in JavaScript. At first, I did not like it very much. However, later, then I tried to develop some more code with React. I noticed that it's really easy and it's really convenient to maintain a large project with a large code base using this component-based structure. So everything is in one file, like all the views, all the app logic, etc. So don't be alarmed, since the last stable version is 0.14, but the next version will be 15. So if you see a project which is using like 0.14, don't think that it's like must be some super old project. They're just changing the versioning system, so the next version will be the 15. Okay, let's move on to Meteor. I've seen in the comments that somebody said they liked the Meteor cat. I personally too really love the Meteor cat. So Meteor is the framework with which I work like every day, and it is developed by Meteor Development Group. It is a full stack framework, like Angular and React. We are just front-end framework, and React just the UI library. So this is a full stack framework. So if you know some web development, you'll know that there's like a Django or Ruby on Rails. So Meteor can be thought as Ruby on Rails. Okay. It works in the back end, it has a database, it works on the front end, it has a router, etc., etc., etc. So I'll talk about it. Don't worry about it right now. I'll explain everything in a bit. So Meteor uses their own specific packages, and because of that, they can be used with various front-end frameworks. That means most of the time you're not like using just Meteor. You're using Meteor and Angular, or Meteor and React, or Meteor and the possibilities are endless. So the last stable version is 1.2. However, the next version will be 1.3. I'm mentioning that because that will be like a very big change. They're changing. They're allowing the npm modules to be loaded inside the app without any additional code. So it's gonna change like Meteor quite a bit, make it much better. It is, in my opinion, quite a stable and mature framework, as it can be. Like it's quite young, but the community behind it is really strong, and people like Meteor, so lots of them use it. So it like became stable and mature quite quickly. The default settings on Meteor as of version 1.2 is it uses Blaze as its rendering engine. So imagine that they're using their own React. Yeah. So it's some facts about Blaze. It is like very easy to learn, like really easy. For beginners, it's much like easier than React, or much easier than Angular. Everything is very intuitive. It's only used by Meteor apps, and it is the most used rendering engine of the current Meteor apps. It is much less powerful than Angular or React, and the community is moving towards. I think React is currently the sweetheart of the Meteor community, but Angular support is also very strong. So in the future, probably what we're gonna see is that React and Angular will be integrated, Meteor and React will be integrated, and Meteor and Angular will be integrated like really tight, and those options will be the default ones. At the moment, you are like free to use Blaze. It won't be like deprecated like really soon, so don't worry about it. What I want to mention about Meteor is, as I mentioned, it was like a full framework. I'm sure that most of you who are not very much familiar with the web development are confused at this moment. So what's the difference between the front-end framework, the UI libraries, the full stack framework? So it means that Meteor it combines everything you need for a web app inside one project. Okay, so one of the main things which all JavaScript frameworks need is Node. I mean, not front end. Like if you want to build a full stack framework, you will need Node. Node was developed, I think, like about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure, like exactly, and it brought a big revolution to the like programming industry, because for the first time it allowed JavaScript to be run inside the server. Before that, JavaScript was only used in the browser, like which you're using a browser right now to view this presentation or webinar. And Node allowed us for the first time to run JavaScript code on the server. It's really big thing, and because of a Node and because of the NPM, lots of cool new projects emerged. Short introduction to what Node.js is. It's just a JavaScript runtime. It allows to run JavaScript code on the server. It is event-driven, non-blocking, and uses the I/O model. So it's basically what it means that it's really fast. It allows you to write a sync code, and the last stable version is 5.7. Node.js not that long ago was also in the versioning system starting with 0, but last year, at the end of the last year, they merged with another project and they had to change their versioning. So npm. So what is npm and why is it so important for the Node success? It is a package manager for Node.js. That means lots of tasks in web development can be automated, and we need to write packages to do that, and to have not to reinvent the wheel every time we are building a web app. So npm is actually the largest ecosystem of the open source libraries in the world. It has a total of almost 250,000 packages, and only in January, it's unbelievable, they had like 3.5 billion downloads. So you can imagine how huge it is. It's really, really huge. The next thing which Meteor uses, they are using Node to run the code, okay? On top of that, they are using MongoDB. If you know at least something about databases, you know that most of the databases are SQL based, like MySQL, like LiteSQL, SQLite, and etc. etc. So MongoDB is actually a NoSQL database. It's a document database, and they use JSON-like document notation. What it means for the web developers, especially for those developing in JavaScript, that it looks as you had that code. It's really, really easy to use, really easy to integrate MongoDB inside the Meteor project. It doesn't even feel that you are querying a database. The code looks almost exactly the same as you would just getting the code from some object. So, as I told you, Meteor has some different flavors. So the first and default flavor is Meteor plus Blaze, and as I told you, it's the most popular option. It's also the best documented option at the moment. One thing why it won't lose its popularity soon is that it works with most of the Meteor packages. That means that packages were built using Blaze in mind, that it was the default option. Now the Meteor community is gonna adapt some other options. Also, one negative thing is that it's less powerful than the alternatives. So the alternatives. First alternative is the Meteor plus Angular. Angular will be used as a front end, and Meteor is used as the back end. What's really cool about this is that it can combine the Meteor and Angular ecosystems. So you can have in the front end, you can have lots of Angular packages. In the back end, you will be using Meteor packages, you will be using MongoDB, you will be using Node.js, of course, to run the Meteor. And you'll be using the database, you'll be using all the good frameworks which make development with Meteor easier. it's also, if you are like experienced Angular developer, it will be for you easier to learn like this Meteor plus Angular flavor than just pure Meteor plus Blaze flavor. Another option is Meteor and React. So this applies much of the same logic as with Meteor plus Angular. However, this is probably the most trending combination in the Meteor community. Looks like, at least, that it has more support than Meteor plus Angular. I personally, I am like indifferent. Both of these options are really good. Also, what's cool about it, it doesn't require additional framework for React. So you're just using React to display the views. We have a really good alternative for Meteor, and it's called Mean. Don't worry about this at the moment that, okay, it's so much information. How am I going to keep track of everything he said? I will have a recap and even present you some use cases, which framework then to use, and what combinations of all these like really confusing stuff. It's like, even for developers it's confusing. So I will present what's the best ways to do, like to develop a prototype, MVP, etc. So Mean just means that it is MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node. So Express is, you can view that Express as a server-side framework, which basically, if you use Mean, it's like quite similar as using Meteor with Angular. Of course, Meteor is doing like lots and lots of things which you don't see, which Mean will not do. On the other hand, Mean is like very customizable. If you are very experienced, or if you have like a really large team, in my opinion, probably Mean is a better option, because it's so customizable. You can replace all the parts if something doesn't feel right. You can, or if you need specific tailoring for some particular task, Mean is gonna be like much more flexible. There are some negative things. So first of all, it will be like much harder to learn, like by a lot, comparing to Meteor. Also, some positive things, it's stable and mature. Also, it is very popular. It's the most popular like stack. It's not a framework, it's a stack actually. So it's the most popular stack at the moment. One new development which came up like probably a couple of weeks ago, so it's called Mern, and it uses, it's basically a stack. It's really similar to Mean, but instead of Angular, it's using React and Redux. It's new and it's not mature, but if you really like React much better than Angular, so you can take a look in the Mern framework. At the moment, I would not recommend you to like build production apps with it, since it's like very new. But who knows? Maybe it will like overtake Mean as the default framework for the working with JavaScript apps. So our first part is over. I really quickly want to tell you about recap what we talked about. So we have some front-end frameworks, React and Angular, and we have some full stack solutions like Mean, Mern, and Meteor. Meteor is by far the easiest to learn. Meteor can be combined with React and Angular. If you want, like Mean is just it has Angular in it, and Mern has React in it. So it's actually like you cannot just use React or Angular. You have to have some backend for that. and those three options are the full app frameworks. So right now we're gonna talk about the mobile apps, and if some of you have experience in developing mobile apps, so you can say, okay, what are you gonna talk about, since iOS apps are developed using Objective-C and Swift, Android apps are developed using Java, and Windows apps are developed using C# and Visual Basic. However, JavaScript found a way to also get in this market, and they're doing that in these two options. So the first option is making hybrid apps, and the second option is making mobile web apps. So I'm gonna discuss what those are in a minute. First of all, native apps. So what are the native apps? You can imagine those as the apps which you download from the App Store. Probably like 90% or 80% of all the apps are native apps. They are better quality, like most of the time, they look better than the hybrid apps. I mean, if the developer's really bad, so of course hybrid apps can look much better than the native apps. However, I mean, if you're building like a super big production app, so you should go probably with native apps. They have to be developed specifically for the selected platform. That means if you are developing for iOS, you are using Swift or Objective-C. You are making an app, and after that you are not using any of the code which you made to port the app to Android. That means Android app has to be completely independent from the iOS app. And for these a few people who want to develop for Windows, they have to make a separate project and to develop for Windows users also, all again a new and different app. These apps are downloadable via the App Store for iOS, Play Store for Android, and Windows Store for Windows. So hybrid apps, and how are they different between the native apps? First of all, they target all the mobile platforms with a single code base. That means you are using, so in the native apps you are using, as I mentioned, Java, Objective-C, Swift, or C#. Hybrid apps, you are making them using JavaScript. So one code base is packaged differently for all the different platforms. That means you only write the app once. And you have Windows app, you have Android app, you have iOS app, and you have even BlackBerry and other really esoteric platforms, mobile platforms. In my opinion, they look and feel 90% as good as native apps. That means the animations are not as good as it would look on the native app. But it's the difference is so small that despite that they can look really good, and they are downloadable the same way as through the App Store, Play Store, and Windows Store. So that means that if you're not an experienced developer, you will not tell the difference. You most certainly you will not know the difference between a hybrid app and a native app. And the advantage of a hybrid app is huge. You can use JavaScript, the language which you know already, and you can develop one code base and use that for all the major platforms. So that's a huge win. The last option is the mobile web apps. So this is what most people call mobile websites, but imagine you can try it. just try to go to your mobile phone and go to Facebook, but not Facebook app, but to the Facebook website. You'll see that it looks like an app. It's like really, it will look like really similar to the Facebook app which you have on your phone, but it will be different. It won't be like as fluid, as fast, or like it won't feel as good as the native app. What's also cool with mobile web apps is that you not only target all the mobile platforms with a single code base, you also target mobile and web with a single code base. That means that you have one code base, you have a web app, you have mobile web app, and all the users like Android users, Windows users, no matter whatever device can use a browser, you can service all of them. There are some like really big disadvantages for that. First of all, we don't look as good, we won't feel as good as native or hybrid apps, and they can be accessible via browser. So if you are like a startup and you want to build an app, it won't cut it, because you cannot just tell, okay, so we have like a mobile website. You have to have it like an app if you are serious about it. So this is like, it can be a solution if you just want to have that functionality. But if you want to have that as a part of like marketing, it probably is not the best option. So how do we make the hybrid apps? I'm not gonna talk about native apps, because this is about JavaScript and those do not use JavaScript. So this is how we make the hybrid apps. There is a project called Cordova, and it's like quite an old project. It's very stable and it does one thing: it packages JavaScript to hybrid apps. That means, as I told you, you just write a single code base, you run Cordova magic, and you will have like an app for iOS, an app for Android, an app for Windows Phone. Most of the time, actually, you won't use the Cordova directly. You will use that together with some front-end or UI framework. I'll show you that in a bit. It supports almost all of the mobile platforms, like a lot. You can go to the Cordova website, you'll see that the list is like really huge. I never had an idea that like Firefox phone or some Ubuntu phone exists. So I did not know that, but this Cordova actually can build to that platform from your JavaScript code. So it's really cool. Also, it is very easy to integrate with Meteor. You just add a Cordova package and you got it. So that's it, like one step. So how do people use Cordova? Probably like 50% of them use it together with Ionic. Ionic is the most popular UI framework for hybrid apps. It's actually, so you won't be dealing directly with Cordova if you're using Ionic. It has like lots and lots of useful tools, so it makes the development even easier. Ionic uses Angular for functionality. It's quite mature and stable framework. They also, so since it's using Angular, they also have a beta, which is using, like this beta is using Angular 2. I found it was quite easy to learn, so check it out. It's like really cool project. It will make your app like look immediately very nice. There's an alternative to Ionic. It's called React. It's basically an alternative because it uses React and not Angular for functionality. So you will see it's like very similar. However, it's not as mature and it's much less popular than Angular. So sorry, than Ionic. So probably at this point it's better to stick with Ionic. So remember, guys, when I told you that I will not tell you how to build native apps because you have to like write Swift or Objective-C code. So I actually lied. There is a way now to make really native apps using JavaScript. And this is thanks to React Native. So a couple of years ago, then React was first introduced, they had an idea that it would be like really cool to make fully native apps, however, using React components. So Facebook worked on this project, and not that long ago, I think probably a little bit more than 1 year ago, so they released the React Native, and it's like really cool. It's not mature and it's not stable at the moment. However, it allows you to build fully native apps using JavaScript. That means, remember that I told that the hybrid apps won't look like 100% as good, the animations won't look as smooth, so it's all gone with React Native. What's also cool about React Native, it's that you already know React, so you know how to build React apps, yeah? So you can like immediately use all your knowledge to go develop iOS and Android apps. So I really like this project. Unfortunately, it's not stable yet, but I really think that it's gonna be like very popular in the future. One thing of like warning that it's actually you won't be using the exact same code base for Android and iOS. The code base has to be a little bit, not a little bit, but like some things it will have to be like platform specific because they look different on Android and on iOS. But you'll see that it's still, you can probably still use about 60% of the code depending on how much backend functionality you're using. So actually there is another alternative to React Native. It's called NativeScript. This project is different from React Native in a way that it allows you to use the exact same code base for iOS and for Android. However, I found that it's the documentation is not as good and it doesn't feel as mature and as stable as even as React Native. So even though it allows you to use the same code, I would probably go with React Native. But if that's what you want, if you want to have like a fully native app and use exactly the same code, you can go with NativeScript and you can check this project out. I think it has a potential to also be like a huge in the future. The second last thing which I'm gonna talk about is the desktop apps. So these are the apps which we use in like just the usual computer programs, how he used to call them. So they again are used, they use Objective-C or Swift for OS 6, C# or Visual Basic for Windows. They use multiple programming languages. I think Python is like the recommended at the moment for Linux. However, there are two JavaScript ways to build desktop native apps. So there are no like hybrid apps for desktop, since desktops are they don't have that much differentiation like platform specific stuff. So Electron and NW.js. First of all, Electron. it is developed by GitHub. It supports the 3 major platforms, and you use the single code base for all the platforms. If you know, if you know that GitHub is like also quite a large company, so you can be sure that the development is really strong. The developers are really experienced, and what's especially like cool about this project is because it's the thing that GitHub made it because they had to. They were developing a text editor called Atom, and one of the things they wanted to do is use JavaScript, or I think they are using CoffeeScript, but that's not important. Let's say they are using JavaScript for the development, and they want to target all the major platforms. So they made this out of necessity, and like the Atom editor really got lots of community support. Actually, I am the user of Atom myself. It's my preferred text editor. So you can imagine that it's like really good, and it proves that Electron is that strong of a framework. Its alternative is NW.js. It was used to call Node WebKit.js. It's actually like really similar to Electron. However, I found that it's also not as mature and stable as Electron. So if I would like develop a new desktop app using JavaScript, I would definitely go with Electron. Okay, so let's move to the last part of our presentation. I will talk about what's the ES 2015, ES 2016, how to do prototyping, building MVPs, building production apps, and getting a job all in JavaScript. So first of all, what is the ES 2015? And you can lots of the time you can find ES6. So ES6 is the same as ES 2015 and the same as that ECMAScript 2015. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but probably like that. So those things are the same. What it is a really huge update on the JavaScript language. That means like really huge. Last time it was ES5. It was in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. And during these like 6 years, lots of things happened. So like Angular happened, React happened, all the other frameworks developed, like web apps, which were not a thing in like almost non-existent in 2009. In 2015, they are like booming, like lots and lots of web apps. So I think they did a really great job. They updated the language like so much. They didn't introduce some like non-important things, but we fixed like really lots of issues which we have like to work around like every day when you are developing. And there's, for example, a function scoped variable. You always you have always take that into account, and you can make like really obfuscated bugs, and you spend some time like finding those bugs. So this thing really improved the development experience. However, even at this moment, even though it's 2015, it's not like 100% implemented in the browsers, especially in the mobile browsers. Desktops are a little bit better. So you have to use one of these services. I'll talk to you about those, which will compile the ES6 code to ES5 code. Some of the features of ES6, they have arrows, lexical this, they have classes, which is like really cool. If you remember when I talked to you about TypeScript, so like TypeScript was, you can view that ES6 like copied a lot of the good things which were developed by TypeScript, and now at the moment TypeScript looks really similar to JavaScript, to the ES6 JavaScript. So these two languages are not only that TypeScript is compiled to JavaScript, but they're getting like really similar without the compilation. So lots of new things improved the life of developers a lot. The new ES 2016 will be ratified this summer. I'm not like exactly sure what's since it's not like over. They have like some ideas. They are working on those, but I'm not like 100% sure which features will be implemented. However, they know some of the features right at the moment. They are not implemented in the browser, so if you want to use the new features which will be available in ES 2016, you will have to use Babel. So this it's not a framework, it's JavaScript compiler, and it compiles ES 2015 and ES 2016 to the ES5. That means you can use, even today, you can use the new code which is not supported by the browsers. You will run the Babel and it compiles your code to the fully supported version. It's really easy to include. You can include it using Meteor or other different build systems, bundlers, etc. It's also like a very good starting point to learn, and also to start including the new code in your project. So finally, for you guys who are thinking about building an MVPs or prototypes, I have some suggestions. I'll tell you in advance that I'm very Meteor biased since I work so much with Meteor. So my suggestions for you, and I truly like 100% believe that it's the best option. If you're building an MVP or a prototype, you should start with Meteor and choose a flavor of like Meteor React or Meteor Angular. You can also use, if you're not experienced, it's like 100% okay to use Meteor and Blaze. However, like Blaze development will not be as fast as it was in the past, so probably it will be like best to choose either React or Angular as the front-end framework. Also, what else you can do, there's a service, like it's called even backend as service. So you can use Firebase and combine it with React or Angular. Firebase is a paid service. However, they have like a free type of free plan. So what you can do, especially if you're building a small prototype, you can just really quickly combine Firebase with React and have a fully working app. It won't be like nearly as powerful as Meteor, because Meteor is like much more powerful, but you can have it working like really quickly. So it's an alternative, and it's also very easy to learn. If you're building a mobile app, you have some different options. First of all, I would probably recommend using Ionic plus Firebase or Ionic plus Meteor. Ionic looks like really good. It's like makes your app look amazing, and I think it's a really good way to start to build like a hybrid app, especially since you're building an MVP. You don't care about that 10% performance gain which you could get from building a native app. and you will spend like months, like unless you have like unlimited project or you are like super genius who knows all the programming languages in the world. So unless those two things, so choose a hybrid app for your first like introduction prototype. You will get like the benefits are like really big. You will get like Windows, Android, iOS right out of the box, like using one programming language, and you can reuse that code, like 80% probably of that code if you're using Meteor, to do your web app. So you will have like a web, you will have Android, you will have iOS and Windows. So all of that almost using exactly the same code, and very quickly. An alternative would be like using React Native, and you can combine again that with Firebase and Meteor. You'll notice that I haven't talked really about Firebase. It's because it's a service. It's like they provide you with anything you need to know. So you can check that out. You can check out Meteor and decide which one you want to use. So if you want to do both, like a web app and mobile app, so a really good way would be to go with Meteor, React, and React Native, or Meteor, Angular, and Ionic. So my two recommended options. Also, you can combine Firebase with the same options. And finally, building a production app. So that's then you go to Mean. At this point, I'm not sure how much, how big your company has to be for you to, or how many users you have to have for Meteor to be like at its limits, because Meteor grown like a lot during the last year. So its limits, it's getting faster like almost every day with each iteration. It's faster, using less memory, adding some really cool stuff. Lots of people working on Meteor, and but probably if you're like a super big company like Google or Facebook, and you're building like a new project, you should really check out Mean. Or you will never be wrong to go with Meteor and with one of the Meteor flavors. If you're building a mobile app and you're, as I said, like a really huge company, you should probably go with a native app. What Facebook did, like it was probably some like 4 years ago, they developed a hybrid app, but Facebook is like super large company with extremely large user base, and they found that a hybrid app is not enough for them. So they after that they decided to build native apps for Android and Windows and iOS. However, if you're not Facebook, it's completely okay to go with the hybrid apps. If you are like as big as those companies, you should probably invest. You have like lots of developers, so invest those developer time and build native apps. If you're like a medium-sized company, you will never go wrong with Ionic and Meteor, or React Native and Meteor. So the last thing which I want to like really quickly introduce, some facts that so if you want to be like a developer, what should you learn? So I listed those as I think is the easiest way to get a job. Angular is by far the most popular, so probably like 40% of the job apps, JavaScript job apps, ads require you to know Angular. Probably around 20% of those require you to know React. Some like Meteor is also like hugely popular project. However, it's not like as popular as the first two. But you will also, I think you will also land a job if you know Meteor well. Also, the same applies to Ionic. It's if you want to build like hybrid apps, so Ionic is like a must for you. Also, I want you to know that so this is like presented by Academy class, and they have a special early bird like offer. So if you book in advance a course like 3 months in advance, you'll get a discount. So if you are serious about learning JavaScript, and as you've seen, it's like everything's possible with JavaScript these days. You don't have to learn any other language. It's like English language, you know it, and you can apply it everywhere. So if you know it, if you want to learn JavaScript, and you want to build a prototype, you want to have a job, or some other ideas, you want to build like a just in your free time build a project, so you can go to our training and have a discount. So thanks you guys. I hope you really enjoyed the presentation. This is our contacts, and I'm very glad that you watch this webinar. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them as best as possible. If you want to chat about JavaScript also, I'll be available for some time in the chat. So thanks again. Goodbye. Have a good evening.